Good? Okay. So we're going to finish Likutey Moharan Torah Lamed Het today. I didn't stay very long. Okay. So...
He left when you said we're going to...
Yeah, I said Torah, he's gone. Okay.
Can I have the drink?
So we started like this. We started to explain that the goal of a Jew is Tefillin. Goal of a Jew is Tefillin. What does that mean? Deveket. Devekis. Tefillin. It's all one concept. It is a sign of attachment. In fact, according to Halakha, you wear Tefillin, it's keneged, you keep all the mitzvot. Why is that? Because it's as if you and Hashem are one. The whole deep concept about you strapping yourself so tight with this tefillin, you have it on your arm opposite your heart, and on your head opposite your neshama, is that you and God are completely one. You guys are together in unity, right? You're connected to God, Hashem. So, but he says you can't just put on tefillin to get this effect. You need to first rectify your speech. How do you rectify your speech? So,
One Torah?
2 steps. This is 38.
Oh, we're not doing one?
We're finishing 38. No. This is something else. Why, you continued from yesterday?
No, it's okay.
So like this. We need to bring everything back to its source. That's how you rectify it. So, because Malchut is a feminine sphere, it's rooted in the higher feminine spheres. So, Malchut is rooted in Gevura. Gevura is the concept of either self-limitation or Hashem putting you through difficulties, right? Either you're limiting yourself or Hashem's putting you through limitations. That's Gevura. So when you take a situation that you're having a difficulty and you learn Torah despite the fact that you're going through the difficulty, that's called Gevura. And the reason why that helps your speech, why isn't it like, I'm refraining from eating too much, or I'm refraining from wasting seed? Why should it be Gevura for the sake of learning Torah? Because when you learn Torah, that is rectified speech. So you're using your Gevura to speak properly. That's why it's Gevura, okay? But then we need to get to the root of that, and that's Bina. Bina is the highest female sphera, and Bina is a code word for tshuva. And Bina is the heart. So what is rectified speech at the level of Bina? It's not holding yourself back from not doing what you want and learning Torah instead. It's praying with all your guts. It's just like completely leaving yourself out there for Hashem, praying with all your heart, crying, screaming, just giving everything that you have. But you're only capable of doing that when you learn Torah when it's difficult for you. There's many people in this class, they talk about how it's very difficult for them to scream out to Hashem, to cry out to Hashem. It's hard for them to do that. They can sit there for an hour and they want to speak, but they can't speak. Why? Because they're only doing things for Hashem when it's convenient. They're not learning Hashem's Torah when it's difficult or when it's confusing. And as a result of that, they don't fix their Gevura. What?
It's like the servant only going to his master when he calls, but not being attentive to his master's needs, so his master doesn't have to call.
Okay. Yes, that's one way of looking at it. Another simple way is just that you need to. It's a big merit to be able to pray. We're learning in this Torah, it's the concept of the ocean splitting. So you see that real, genuine prayer is redemption. So it's the biggest thing. So in order to merit redemption, in order to merit the ocean splitting, you need to first have a degree of self-sacrifice. And self-sacrifice is Gevura. And when you self-sacrifice for the sake of learning Torah, so this is the highest level of speech. Okay? When you do this, so to speak, Hashem now unlocks your heart. Because prior to this, you had a lot of klippas. But you're breaking those klippas by learning Torah, even when you don't want to, even when it's difficult. Okay. Now you're able to pray with fervor. And as a result of praying with fervor, now you have access tshuva. And once you've done tshuva, now you can start to fear Hashem. Prior to that, you can't have genuine yirat Hashem. You can't have genuine busha before Hashem because Hashem is hidden from you. Hashem only reveals himself to the person who is prepared to experience him. That person's only prepared to experience when he has these two levels. Now you'll notice something very interesting. When you wrap tefillin, you can't put the head tefillin on first, which is the higher level, right? That's the level of consciousness. That's the level of your soul. You need first your arm, which is the concept of learning Torah when it's difficult for you, right? You're strapping your arm, that's gevurah. And where is that tefillin pointing to? Your heart, which is tefillah. So that's those two levels. So what Rav Nachman's bringing us through, he's trying to show you that tefillin is not just a mitzvah of a physical object. It is a process through which we attain devekut with Hashem. First, Torah when it's difficult, then intense prayer, and then busha. Then yirat Hashem.
How do you do it if the person is lefty
If
and
his
they
arms
have
are
to
too
put
big
it?
for his shirt?
No. If they
Get bigger shirts, Daniel. No, I'm just kidding.
If they're lefty and they have to put it in the right.
So either way, it's the same.
But
Whatever
that is not pointing the heart, is it?
So it's still pointing to your heart, right? There are actually there are some poskim who hold when the Torah said you have to do it on your weak arm, it always means the left arm, no matter what your writing arm is, because
The left is connected.
because they hold that the left and your heart are right next to each other, like you're saying.
A lot of people still do that.
Because that's not how we hold halakha. That's not how we hold.
Does Rabbi Nachman has an explanation as to why we only put it on the arm and not the hand, and we do the head and then the arm? The head.
So we're going through the whole process right now.
Okay.
So we're doing the head, right? And now what is the head? The head is the concept of I'm conscious of God, and that's called yira. And that's the reason why when you see a tzaddik, you yourself experience heightened yira, because he always has tefillin on his head. Because he's always learning Torah when it's difficult, because he always is engaged in intense prayer, now, so to speak, he always has his head tefillin on. He has all his tefillin on. And now when you see him, so you develop yira from that. You experience yira from him because he has busha. That's why Yeshaya says that at the end, all the non-Jews are going to look at us and they're going to be scared. Why? Because of the tefillin on our head. Because we're all going to have attained yira at that point. Right? Yes. Okay. And we talked about the fact that this is really the whole goal of creation. That the word Bereshit Bar Elokim, you can take the word Bereshit and if you flip it around, it's Yira Boshet. Yira, fear, Boshet, right? To feel shame or to feel. So you see, Bereshit Bar Elokim, Hashem created Shemayim v'Aretz for the sake of us attaining this level of Yira Boshet. Boshet means to feel so overawed by something that you feel very small in comparison and insignificant.
It's like an overwhelming.
Yeah, it's an overwhelming feeling of insignificance in comparison to the thing that you're trying to connect to. Now you might say to yourself, why would I want to experience that? And the truth is, it's the happiest that you can be. David HaMelech says that true joy comes from yira. Comes from fear.
Imagine just sitting in front of the Niagara Falls. Right there.
And the Zohar, you're the cutest, I want to kiss you. The Zohar also says,
We said not to speak like that.
the Zohar says that wherever you find yira, you'll find peace. You'll find peace.
Maybe that's another reason why Rav Nachman says to go to do in the field.
Wherever you find yira, you'll find peace. Okay. So now, with that being said, we're going to finish up the Torah. And it goes like this. There's a story in the Gemara in Bechorot, a very unusual story. It says a cedar tree fell in our vicinity. 16 wagons went across its edge. Okay. So Rav Nachman says like this. It is known of the tzaddik that he serves Hashem with such great devekut, he has such attachment with his mind, with his intellect, with his godly soul, that when he falls to a level lower than that even though his present level is still very great in comparison to every other tzaddik, still he's nevertheless embarrassed by that level. I give you guys the example of how in the past, right, just like most of us, I used to weigh seed all the time. And I never had any type of negative feeling afterwards, at least that was explicit. And then when I learned it was not such a good thing, so then I started to feel it wasn't right. But when I saw something, it didn't make me feel busha. When I thought of something, it didn't make me feel busha. Only when I actually did the act. And then eventually, as I grew spiritually, and I stopped wasting seed, I didn't just have busha for the wasting seed. I had busha even for seeing certain things, right? And then as I grew more than that, I didn't just have busha for seeing things. I also had busha just for having thoughts of things. Right? So you see that that's a level of increased spiritual growth, advancement. Okay. Now the tzaddik, his busha is so great that even when he falls, he's still holding at a higher level than everybody else. But for him, that's an embarrassment. He feels embarrassed. He feels shame.
Like Moshe throwing the loophole?
Yeah, sure. This is because for someone of his level, this is called a fall. It is as if he did a very serious avera, and he has to do tshuva as if he had just, like, let's say, did adultery. Right? That's how serious he takes his non-avera.
Wow.
Through this, he comes to great busha, the aspect of tefillin, and that's what it says. Then you're going to understand the fear of Hashem, and through this, he comes to greater da'at, meaning that fall was because Hashem wants to get him to a higher level of consciousness.
The tzaddik is always doing tshuva.
Yeah, so a tzaddik's always doing tshuva. Exactly. Now, the primary light of the tefillin comes from the luchot, comes from the tablets. Why is this? As it's brought, when the Jewish people said, "We will do and we will hear," it said that they merited Zacha lachagirat zayina ila'a, a supernal coat of armor. And what does the Zohar say this was? It was tefillin. Meaning they got Torah when it was difficult, and they merited tefillin. Right? That's exactly what we're learning. And what happened? They trained this year of Hashem.
Spoke it out and they died.
Exactly. And from the tablet's light, Moshe merited a radiance of his face. What was that? The head tefillin. And then they were scared of him. For by sharpening the intellect through the Torah, your da'at becomes sharpened. That's why Rav Nachman says it's a mitzvah gedola to know Torah as well as you can. He doesn't say to learn as much as you can of it. He says whatever you can know, you should do your best to know it as well as possible. Why? Because the sharpening of your da'at, the sharpening of your intellect, is the prerequisite for getting yira. One gains added perception in recognizing Hashem, and then he gets extreme busha before Hashem. This is because the tablets are the root of the Torah. They are called Yud Vav. Why? Because the 10 Commandments are Yud,
and the
Vav is the size of the tablet, 6 by 6. Right. So now we can get a little bit of a hint. Why do we care that it's a Yud Vav? The tablets are called 16. Because the story is the tree fell in our vicinity and 16 wagons came by.
So the tree would be...
The tzaddik is called, we say this every Shabbat, that he is a cedar from Lebanon. Right? He's called Erez Lebanon, a cedar of Lebanon. As it's written, the tzaddik will bloom like a date palm, like a cedar in Lebanon. So he's the tree that fell. And this is what the Talmudic said as praise of the tzaddik. Why? He fell in our vicinity, meaning that according to us, we wish we could be at this level. For him, this is a fall, though. That was his praise. And it went across. What is went across? Via vor. It's always the concept of revelation. That we went across him in the wagons, meaning that the students got a revelation, a higher revelation of God because the tzaddik fell. Rav Nachman says elsewhere that there are times that the tzaddik falls just for the sake of his students to experience a higher level of revelation.
Only for them.
Yeah, only for them, not for his sake. It's for their sake. Because when he falls, they're able to get more of that light.
In this case is
So for example, Rav Nachman says that in truth, a true tzaddik, his light is so great that if you could truly experience it, you would never be able to approach him. So what does Hashem do? He, so to speak, he diminishes that light so that we can all receive from him. And how does he diminish his light? By having other people hate on him. By having other people have machloket about him, that diminishes the light enough that people can start to learn from him. But if everybody was on board, let's say that Rabbi Nachman was the guy, you would never even begin to start learning his Torah. Because the machloket is a fall for the tzaddik. And now you can learn from him. Okay.
So you need people.
Yes, you always need a gevurah in the world. Okay. That's why the word wagons in Aramaic is kranot, which is very similar to the Hebrew word keren, which is light. Tefillin. Right? In addition, Hashem is called Makom Sha'olam. He's called the place of the world. And there's a very famous midrash. He says that Hashem is the place of the world, but the world is not his place. Again, I want everybody to listen. It says Hashem is the place of the world, but the world is not his place. What does that mean? That Hashem is everywhere, and yet this is not his home. He transcends this place. He's everywhere, and he's above. What does that mean? He fell to a perception of God that was equivalent to our perception. So even though he's embarrassed to be at our level, okay, good. And like I just said, this is Bereshit. And if you notice, the word Bereshit is, what's the word? We said this before. Roshei Bat. The heads, I want to say it, the heads of the houses, which is what? The three colors of your eye and the pupil. Right? We said this before. Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov are the three colors of the eye, and then the black, the pupil, is Malchut, King David. Okay? These four are corresponding to the four tefillin. So you see that the very first... What? The four parchments in the tefillin. So you see that in the very first word of the Torah, for the sake of tefillin, the world is created. And this is the explanation that it says, if you tashiv your foot on Shabbat, we say this every Shabbat, if you restrain your foot on Shabbat, you refrain from pursuing your affairs on my holy day. So what is Shabbat? If you flip the letters around, it's Busha. Shabbat is the concept of Busha. Shabbat is the concept of Yira, right? Shabbat is Yira, like we said, that the word Bereshit is also Yira Shabbat. Not just Yira Boshet, because if you flip Boshet around, it's Shabbat. Yira Shabbat. Shabbat is the attainment of Yira, when you are connected. So that's Busha. That's your Regel, meaning, what did we say before? According to the Torah, according to the deeper teachings, feet is always the concept of prayer, speech. You stand on your speech or you fall based on your speech. So withhold your feet on my holy day, meaning make sure that your speech is rectified on Shabbat. 1 second. Which means what? That in order for me to experience Busha, meaning Shabbat, I have to first rectify my speech. That's holding back my foot from pursuing your affairs on my holy day. Why? Because 39 curses were applied to Adam, Chava, the Nachash, and the ground. Right? 10 for Adam, 10 for Chava, 10 for the Nachash, 9 for the ground. And we're not allowed to do 39 different works on Shabbat. Meaning what? Remember the Shabbat day. Remember it from the first day of the week. So we learn this simply as every day we need to remember the Shabbat that's coming. So that's why every single day we have a different tefillah at the end of Shachrit, remembering the day in conjunction to Shabbat. Rav Nachman says that concept is much deeper. It's not that you're supposed to be remembering now for Shabbat. You're supposed to be taking Shabbat into now.
So basically, make Shabbat like an everyday type of thing.
You're supposed to be taking the light of Shabbat and bringing it into your day. What does that mean? On Shabbat, you're only supposed to talk about holy things, meaning rectified speech. You're supposed to try and make your day like Shabbat. That's what it means, remember Shabbat every day. Don't remember Shabbat that's coming. Make today Shabbat. That's right. But Shabbat is the level of Yira. So this is the pinnacle. So the Tzaddik is saying, take Yira and infuse it into your day. Don't wait for Shabbat. Take Shabbat and infuse it into your day. Rectify your speech now, today, and then it will be like Shabbat for you. Okay, and now there is a famous Gemara in Chagiga. Rabbi Yossi says like this: woe to mankind They see, but they don't know what they see. They stand, but they don't know on what they stand. What does the land stand on? The land stands on pillars, and the pillars are on water, and the water is on mountains, and the mountains are on the wind, and the wind is on the storm, and the storm is on the arm of Hashem. And you didn't know any of this. That last part I added.
Okay.
So now, according to the Torah, what are we saying? The land stands on the pillars. The land is always the concept of Bina. When Hashem promised Abraham the land of Israel, He was promising him Bina, meaning Olam Haba. Whenever the Torah speaks about the land of Israel, it's not just talking about the physical land. It's talking about Olam Haba. When Hashem said to Abraham, your children are going to inherit the land, it means your children are going to Olam Haba. That's why he couldn't believe it. It wasn't a physical land. It's Olam Haba. That's why they called the Eretz Yisrael Eretz Achayim. The land of the living, meaning forever living, always living. So that's Bina. So that's Bina, which is what? Yira. That's Tefillin. So he was promising them Tefillin. Now it says the land, though, it stands on pillars. Meaning, Busha or Yira or Tefillin, you must first establish pillars. What are pillars? Prayer is called Amud, a pillar. Like it says, Pinchas Amad, and he prayed. He stood and he prayed. Meaning, Yira stands on Tefillah. You need to first have intense prayer before you can experience real Yira. And these pillars are on the water, meaning what? That is on the heart when it pours out like water to Hashem. So this prayer needs to be on water. It needs to be intense. It needs to be like you're crying out from your heart. And that water is on the mountains. The mountains is the concept of the Torah, right? You cannot get to this level of prayer without first learning Torah when it's difficult. That's like climbing up a mountain. And these mountains are on the wind, meaning what? The wind is the breath of the speech of Hashem. And the wind is on the storm. And what's the storm? The storm is the Yetzer Hara. And the Yetzer Hara is on the arm of Hashem, meaning what? Because mankind, like you just said, needs Gevurah. It needs the Yetzer Hara. It needs Din. And that's why it says in the Midrash, when Hashem created the Malach HaMavet, the angel of death, he said, this is Tov Me'od, very good.
What? You just said when Hashem created the angel of death, said that this is Tov Me'od?
Yeah.
What book are you reading from?
It's in the Midrash.
What day? It's not in the Chumash?
What day of the week? Second
No, it's
day.
not in the Chumash.
Tuesday?
Yeah. Yeah. It says it's very
When
good
did he create the world?
Why is that?
because he created the Malach
For the
HaMavet.
second day.
Why is that?
Why is that great?
No, why is that good?
Yeah, so that's good because that puts you through difficulties. And now when you learn Torah, in spite of those difficulties, you can rectify your speech.
So at that moment he gave him Bechira.
Yes.
When he created the Malach.
Yeah.
So that's why he said it was good.
The difficulties, he's so happy about it because they're these difficulties, they're so good because they give you free will and they give you the opportunity to rectify, right? When you look at Gevurah on its own, it's very destructive.
Yeah, you can only see just the Malach.
Right, but when you see Gevurah
from the
in,
Torah perspective.
from the perspective of love, so you can see how it's good. So when you go through a difficulty, if you just dissociate that from everything, then you're just sad, or you're just angry, or you're just frustrated, or you're just scared. But if you see it as an opportunity, oh, Hashem is allowing me to come closer to Him now. He wants me to rectify my speech, so He's giving me a clue right now by giving me this difficulty. Go learn Torah now. If I learn Torah while it's hard, now I'm going to rectify my speech. And while I'm rectifying my speech with the Torah, now I can pray with fervor. And if I can pray with fervor, now I can get Yira. And if I can get Yira, then I'm in the land of the living. I'm in Eretz Yisrael.
Every time there's an uproar in Gevurah, it means you need to learn Torah.
That's right. That's why you always hear Rav Walken. He said, when things are going on in my life, I just put my head down and read the book. So what does it sound like? It sounds like he's running away from his problems. But in truth, he knows this. Right? Rav Chaim Kanievsky, when his wife passed away, he was very close with her. She used to be with him in the house every single time he learned. He wouldn't learn unless she was there with him. Yeah. I guess he just he felt comfortable when she was with him.
Bro, women are on the higher. I didn't call you, bro. Women are on a higher level. So just like their very presence is.
And also, people who are sensitive, they understand, they appreciate their wives.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. So, most of the biggest people. You know what's funny? My rabbi Rav Walken, when it comes to Litvaks and Hasidim, especially Chabadniks, there's a very big divide, right? No. When my Rebbe saw there's a video of the Lubavitcher Rebbe crying after his wife passed away. He started to tear up and he said he's a big person. He didn't, not from his Torah, not from how many people who helped. He saw by how emotional he got when his wife passed away that he was a very big person. So you see that there's a very big concept of, yeah, I guess, connecting to your wife, honoring your wife. Okay. So Rav Chaim Kanievsky, when his wife passed away, he just couldn't learn. This is the Torah giant of our generation. He's like our Moshe Rabbeinu, He knows Torah greater and in a much deeper way than anybody else in the world. He couldn't learn. So he sent a letter to one of his close friends who's also a giant in Torah, and he said, I don't know what to do. He said, just pick up your book and learn. So it sounds like, what kind of advice is that? And it's this. It's Gevura, now go learn.
I think really all these are is just little stops and how the Yetzer Hara does it so that way you don't learn the Torah. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Like, all these problems.
You go learn.
Yes.
No matter how hard.
Yes. And the harder it is, this is a greater opportunity for you to rectify your speech. One second, Mike. Because you have to realize that that's what this is. We have a lifetime's worth of unrectified speech. Mm-hmm. Hashem does not give you more than you're able to handle at one point. So if He wanted to have you rectify all of it at one time, you wouldn't be able to handle all of those trials and tribulations. So over the course of your life, or days, or weeks, or months, or whatever, He gives you difficulties that you're able to handle. And if you see that as an opportunity, now I can rectify a little bit of those past speech and lift it up by learning Torah right now, is an opportunity for me. Yes, Mike?
So after you have difficulties and strong hard for you and everything, so you're supposed to pick up the book and start learning and all that, and then through that you get rectified, you rectify your speech, meaning that you fix your
yes, and through that you're going to merit to pray truthfully, genuinely. And then through genuine prayer you'll get yira. Okay. So now let's go back to the first verse and we'll finish this Torah, and then I have a little tiny Torah we're going to do after that, which is very nice and good to go into Shabbat with, Bezrat Hashem. It should give you some chizuk, okay? So the pasuk that we started this Torah with was Paro's Merkavot, and his army cast into the sea. His select officers were drowned in the sea of the reeds. So we say this every morning, right? This is the Naz Yashir. Levi? Okay. This is the Naz Yashir. Makavot Paro vechelo, right? That Paro's chariots, an army, he cast into the sea. So now listen to how Rav Nachman connects the whole Torah to this pasuk. Paro's Markavot, an army. This is the aspect of Tefillin. Why? Because the Zohar says something very interesting. The Zohar says that Paro is Bina.
But of the opposite. Of Sidra,
So we just said that Bina is the land of the living. It's Eretz Yisrael. But now Rav Nachman is giving us a very deep secret. The only way to get into the land is to first confront Paro. He's only in the land of the living. You have to first confront Paro before you can live in that land. So that
no running away from this?
No, not unless you don't want to live in the land.
You must encounter.
You must encounter Paro. That's why it's.
I've been having that all day.
That's why I forget which pasuk it is, but there's a very weird pasuk. I think it's in Parshat Bo, where it said that Moshe came to Paro, and the rabbis were confused about this. Why was he coming to Paro? I forget what this whole thing was. And the answer is because Paro is where it's at. Paro is where God is.
Because it's in the mouth.
Because God is in Olam Haba. Right? That's where we have God forever. So that's where Paro is. So Moshe Dafka went to Paro. So let's see more.
Wow, so that's what you mean by
Where's the Zohar learn this from?
Right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. So what does the Zohar say? The word Paro comes from the word pra, which means to uncover, meaning that God is revealed through her. Okay? And Tefillin are called markavot. They're called chariots. Like it's written, he who rochev, he rides on Shemayim. Rochev comes from the word markava. So therefore, this is the concept of Tefillin. Meaning what? Tefillin chimes from Paro, meaning you can't get Tefillin before you go meet Paro in Egypt.
So you need
to have had the difficulties to learn Torah in spite of the difficulties. That's being confronted by Paro and learning anyway. Through that, you rectify your speech, and through rectified speech, you get Tefillin. Okay?
Is it still tied to Tikkun Ovid?
Everything is always content.
Okay, Pharaoh was A1 in killing babies.
Yes.
Hence the killing babies wasting seed.
So rectified speech and not wasting seed, they go hand in hand.
Okay.
But also the ability to stop wasting seed also comes with the learning of Torah when it's difficult
Hence
for you.
confronting power.
Did you have a class yesterday?
Yes. One second. Let me
I just wondered, did you mention anything about the actual strapping?
We actually didn't continue the Torah. I saved it because you guys weren't here. Okay. So now it says Yara Bayam. Now, if you take the word Yara Bayam, you threw him in the ocean. Yara, if you add one for the word itself, it's equal to Gevura. The Gevura was thrown into the Yam, and we know that the Yam is speech. So meaning what? That into the water corresponds speech. Therefore, by taking speech and elevating it to Gevura, which is its source, right? We said that's how you rectify. So by going to Paro, meaning you're having difficulties in your life, you learn Torah anyway, then you're able to rectify speech by bringing it back to its source, which is Gevura. That's throwing Yara, which is Gevura, into the sea, which is speech. And by what means will you be able to elevate the spoken word to its source? By studying Torah at night, meaning when it's hard. And through this study, you're going to have a chutcha chesed. You're going to have a thread of loving kindness for you during the daytime, and that's why the ocean split during the day.
Wasn't it night on one side, day on the other?
Yes? But for the basic understanding for the class, the sea split during the day, meaning he was able to rectify his speech so that when daytime came, he was able to pray.
Good. It's good to go.
That's why it said that Abraham, at the end of his life, he had a daughter whose name was Bat Kol. Now, Kol is also the gematria of Yam, meaning he acquired rectified speech. Yam is the ocean. The ocean is rectified speech. Yes, which is complete amuna. Yes, he acquired complete amuna. Amuna and speech are one concept. So Bat Kol is really the Yam. He got the ocean. He rectified his speech. That's why it's called the Yam Suf, because the end is for us to rectify our speech. That's how we leave our exile.
There is no avoiding this.
No.
Talking to Hashem factor. There's no avoiding it.
No.
There's no way you can go throughout life. There's no way you can get an Eretz Yisrael. There's no way you can come out of Paro's land without crossing that Yam.
Yes.
Wow.
That's why it says, select Shalishav were drowned in the ocean. This word Shalishav is a very bizarre word, and we translate it as officers. But it's really closer to the word Shalosh, like the Torah is called the threefold teaching. And select is Abraham, that he said he was selected. He selected Abraham. Benny? Focus. The explanation is, by means of the Torah, through which we awaken the attribute of Abraham, the spoken word is rectified. So what's happening is like this. We're rectifying speech by bringing it back to its source in Gevura. Now, interestingly, when you put an act of Gevura on yourself, when you limit yourself for something spiritual like learning Torah, you actually activate Hashem's chesed. Benny, focus. What? When you limit yourself, when you do an act of Gevura for the purpose of studying Torah, then what does it mean that you learn Torah at night? Meaning you learn when it's hard for you, so that's an act of Gevura. And as soon as you yourself do an act of Gevura, Hashem then gives you chesed. You awaken Hashem's chesed.
What's an act?
A Gevura is an act of self-limitation. Meaning I don't want to learn right now, and I'm doing it anyway. That's an act of Gevura. Right? And then as a result, Hashem reciprocates by giving you chesed, which is blessing. And that He gives you during the day. Okay, so that's the end of this lesson. I'll read you this thing real quick right now
From that lesson before you go on.
for this lesson.
Yes, from that. It's a question from that lesson.
Okay, but let me read this from this lesson, and then I'll get you a quick question. Okay, so it's like this. There's a Perush, there's a commentary on this Torah, and he wants to explain something very, very deep based on this whole Torah that we just learned. He writes, when Abraham was promised he would inherit the land of Israel, he asked Hashem for a proof. For someone of his spiritual level, this request was a blemish of speech. Right, so he blemished his speech, and now as a result, now Hashem says, now your kids have to go into exile. But he first had to blemish his speech. Why? Because we said that you cannot go through a test if you do not first blemish your speech.
Yeah, all 10 of those tests prior to this.
Just forget about it. Just wait. Think about what we're saying. As a result, Abraham's descendants, the Israelites, were obligated to go into exile in Egypt. Now, in our lesson, we have seen that speech can be rectified by drawing Shabbat into your day during the week and studying Torah. But as this was before the giving of the Torah, only the former was possible, meaning they didn't have Torah, they only had Shabbat. Thus, Moshe was somewhat able to alleviate his people's suffering. You know, it's something very interesting. What was one of the first things that Moshe asked Paro to do for the Jewish people that he said yes to?
Give them a week, give them one day out of the week to rest.
Yeah, he gave them Shabbat. Meaning he couldn't give them Torah yet because Hashem hadn't revealed it, but he knew that if he can give them Shabbat during their day, during the weekday, this could be the beginning of their rectification. So you see that for you it's the same thing. The beginning of your tikkun is making your days like Shabbat. Whatever you would do on Shabbat, focusing on Torah, focusing on tefillah, making sure your speech is holy, right? Dressing in nice garments. So all of these things actually rectify your speech, rectify those days.
Eating on Shabbat too?
No, we don't have the level of eating. No, we have to do the act of gavur there.
No loopholes for that.
No loopholes for that. This corresponds to a partial rectification of speech, meaning you need the Torah for the full rectification, but he was able to do the Shabbat part. This is why Moshe was said to stutter, because his aspect of speech was in exile.
Because there's no Torah yet.
Right.
That's why his speech impediment.
Yes.
Not because he physically was blind.
Right.
Because there's no Torah.
Because when he spoke Torah, he didn't stutter.
Right. Because
Only just
because you can only have your speech rectified through Torah.
There is no such concept of stuttering with Torah.
Right.
Right. This is why later on Hashem gave the Jews 2 mitzvot before they left. He gave them the Pesach offering, and he gave them the Brit Milah. And what do they correspond to? They're both extreme acts of self-sacrifice. So we wanted to give them like an act of sacrificing to learn Torah in difficulties by giving them the Pesach Korban and the Brit Milah in Egypt. And through those two, plus the Shabbat during the week, they were able to leave
So they
Egypt.
always had 2 simonim, right?
What?
So they always had 2 simonim.
Also true, yes. Now these mitzvot helped them leave. Why? Because it elevated their speech to the point that their speech split, meaning they rectified it. Okay. And then the klipot that ruled over their speech previous to this, they were drowned in the ocean, meaning the tefillah overcame them, and they drowned in it. And then we say Ajashir, and that's why we're able to sing in the end, because our speech is fully developed. And fully developed speech with Hashem is song. That's why Mashiach is a singer, because he's going to redeem us. And then what happened? It said the Jewish people had tremendous year of Hashem at that point, when the ocean split. Right? They feared Hashem and they believed in Hashem and Moshe. That's what it says. So they acquired Tefillin. That was redemption. This is why Rabbi Nachman refers to speech as Bat Avraham, because it was Avraham's speech that brought about the exile, but it was also speech that later brought the salvation. Okay. Let's have one more example of this, because this is every exile is like this. Purim. You ready? It said in the book of Esther, we find that Haman's status was elevated achar devarim, after these matters. The same exact thing that we learned about Abraham when he was tested. And what does Rabbi Nachman say? Don't read it achar devarim after these matters. Read it behind the words. Meaning, when the words became blemished, Haman, Hitler came into power. You hear? This is the only way it can happen. Only achar devarim, after the words. When the words are blemished, that's the only way. This alludes to blemished speech from which Haman drew his strength to accuse the Jews. Why? What do we say? That your own blemished speech creates shadim, which then accuse you. So that became a physical human being in the form of Haman. Haman accused them because of their blemished speech.
What's worse? Good question. What's worse, the upper brit or the lower brit?
It's one thing. This whole concept, there's no worse. This whole concept of blemished speech means they're both blemished. To counter Haman's evil, the Jews had to rectify their speech, and that's why they prayed for 3 straight days before they were saved.
Also, they had to refrain from relations.
Okay. Also, and now one must speak truth for their prayer to be heard, as indicated by the word Adar, which is a acronym for Rosh Devarcha Emet. The head of your word is truth. Thus, although Haman tried to eradicate them because Moshe passed away, then it's also when he was born, meaning when truth was revealed in the world.
But he looked at it in a Gevura aspect.
Right. This is why when the salvation came, there was light and joy, gladness and yakar. And also it's deeper than that. We're going to learn in the next Torah, I'm going to teach you guys, that is, I hinted to this in the past. What, the Sitra Akra doesn't know everything that's going on? It doesn't, right. So the answer is that Hashem makes like a pre-malfunction in it. He pre-programs a malfunction in it. So that even though they will, it's able to punish you for your averot and therefore gives you free will, still through that challenge, that's your redemption. And that there's nothing they can do about that.
Through the challenge comes correction.
Yes. So therefore, in our context, because the Jews studied Torah in difficult times, and we know that they were learning from, right? Haman saw them learning from Mordechai, Torah, in difficulties, and then praying for those 3 days.
He got salty.
Yeah. So you
Real
see,
salty.
yeah. So that's this whole Torah. And then what does it say in Esther at the end? Many of the nations of the land converted to Judaism because the fear of the Jews had fallen upon them. So they attained Yira. They got Tefillin. Yeah, so that's the whole Torah. Yes, you have a question before we move on?
Yeah, 2 questions. Number 1, from the previous one, when you talked about tefillah and the feet.
Yes.
Is that why when Moshe Rabbeinu approached the burning bush, God told him to take your shoes off?
Why?
Because of the connection between
feet and speech.
Feet and speech, and also Moshe Rabbeinu's constant
I'll tell you
let
something
him go into Eretz Israel.
I'll tell you something very deep.
Okay.
Shoes in the Torah are the concept of your body. Right? You put your feet in your shoes. They allow you to go from place to place. Just like your body inhabits your soul, like a shoe covers your feet.
Man,
That's why.
didn't go out to
Who's it?
So Hashem was
Enoch was a shoemaker.
right. So Hashem was telling Moshe, you need to leave your physicality before you can experience me. You need to leave your body, so to speak. Take your shoes off.
Same with Abram and the angels.
Okay. Now listen to this, Avram. You're gonna like this. Listen.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah, you could do a new recording. Any other questions before we move on? Practically about